all of you here this morning. I wasn't going to bring this up because I didn't want to sound like I was whining to you. I've whined enough to my wife over the past week, but I'm starting out right here, but it's very likely I'll end right here. We took the teenagers to the trampoline park Monday, and then one of my friends texted me and was like, "Hey, you want to play basketball tonight?" I'm not yet smart enough to say no. So I woke up Tuesday morning with a very, very strained back. And the longer I stand up, the more it hurts. So I might end up right here and just laugh at me. It'll be okay. But I am glad to be here this morning. I'm glad to see you all here. As you can see on the board, we're going to be talking again about a problem, and you'll learn with me. I like to kind of preach this way and talk about the problems that there are, and I'm kind of going to talk about why I like to address problems. That's how I want to start out. And as I've talked about a lot, I really enjoy psychology. I've went through a little bit of training to be a therapist. I hope to go back at some point. But these are two different kinds of therapy that people use in their practice. One being cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's kind of the one that I learned, kind of the one that I like. I like to see how it works. And then there's solution-focused therapy. With both of these, you kind of come up with a goal, and these are very, very simplistic terms for all of this. I'm not going into extreme detail on any of it, but the difference comes right here. There's a problem that keeps you from reaching that goal. With cognitive behavioral therapy, you figure out what your goal is, and you figure out what the problem is that is keeping you from achieving that goal. And you attack that problem. You try to figure out how can we fix that problem. Where solution-focused, you're focused on just that, the solution. You don't worry about what the problem is. You only look at the solution to it. I'm not a huge fan of this. I'm in my 0 years of experience, I just don't see how this is going to work as well as cognitive behavioral therapy. But it's how do you approach reaching the goal? That's the difference between these two. And I kind of, in more, I guess, of an example, more simplistic terms, me and Megan went with some of our friends last night to Outback because we had some gift cards. Thank y'all. And I said, hey, if we're going to Outback, I'm going to eat as much as I possibly can. I mean, I did research online. I ate an apple in the morning, and I drank more water yesterday than I think I have in a week's time throughout my entire life because I was going to eat as much as I could. So we ate late. So I was pretty hangry, hungry and angry. So, I could find the smallest little thing to complain about, oh, this person's driving too slow. And, you could have done as much as you could to fix those little things that I'm complaining about. You could have made that person drive faster and all that. All you're doing is plugging holes. You could plug all those holes and fix all those little things that I'm complaining about, or you could just feed me. And really, that's the answer to it. And that's, to me, is the difference between these two. Is one of them, you're just plugging leaks. You just find the smaller things, and this is what I want to be. Okay, well, let's plug that. When you don't look at the more root cause of the problem. So that's kind of like what I want to do with looking at problems in the church, and I think that's the best reason that we look at what our problems are. So our goal is heaven. I don't think that's a big surprise. Our goal is to get to heaven, is bring as many people as we possibly can with us. So with that goal, what keeps us from reaching that goal? And I want to make this very clear. This is my opinion. I can't back this up with fact. I don't want you to take my opinion with a grain of salt. This is nothing I can point to in the Bible. This is just something that, this is what I really think the biggest problem in the church is today. And that is apathy. Not really caring as much as we should. Not understanding, I think that's the biggest thing, is not understanding what it truly takes to be a Christian in the world today. People assume, I go to church, I don't go partying, I don't do this, I don't do that, and it becomes so many times people think it's going to church and then not doing things. But when it comes down to it, I can put a mannequin in the front seat. A mannequin's never going anywhere, and it's never going to do anything bad, and it's always going to be in church. But that doesn't make that mannequin a Christian. So that's where apathy comes in. People don't understand how much it really takes to be a Christian. And the verse that Nathan read for us this morning, Revelations 3:15, talks about being lukewarm, not being hot or cold. And, there's not a lot of uses for lukewarm water. Like I said, I've had a bad back this week, so me as a 25-year-old man, I have taken baths this week in scalding hot water to try to make my back feel better. I have also iced my back. So there's good uses for both hot and cold water. There's not a lot of use for lukewarm water. And that's what God says here is, I will vomit you out of my mouth. That's really strong terminology there. But that's how serious he is. It says pick one, hot or cold. I don't want you to be right in the middle. I want you to take a side. I want you to be completely for me or completely against me. And that is the exact opposite of what apathy is. You talk about sitting on the fence. That is what being lukewarm is. That is apathy. We cannot be apathetic. And apathy is dangerous to, first of all, it is dangerous to you. But I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. This is Paul saying this. If you are apathetic, you're not going to be disciplining your body. You're not going to be working on it. And Paul says here, at least me, one of the biggest leaders in the church, least I fall. And we think that we don't have a chance to do the very same thing. If we are apathetic, we do not work at our Christianity, there's a good chance that we will fall. It is dangerous to other Christians. Proverbs 27, as iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the contingency of his friends. So, we build off of each other. We see where it also talks about good company corrupts bad morals. Well, the same thing works in reverse. Good company helps good morals. So, if you are apathetic and you walk around the church apathetic, you walk around your friends apathetic to what we are doing here, other people are going to see that. And whether they want to or not, they're going to kind of become more apathetic because of it. I tell the kids all the time, I have never in my life seen a kid go to high school and say, yeah, I go to my friends with parties, but I don't drink. I'm just a designated driver. And by the end of their high school career, they're not drinking with their friends. It's just how it happens. You more or less are the people that you hang around. So as a Christian, we hurt other Christians when we are apathetic. Not only that, but we hurt non-Christians. Therefore, by their fruits, you will know them. Jesus here is talking about false teachers, more or less. And when it comes down to it, being apathetic is kind of a form of false teaching. It's showing people this is what you got to do to be a Christian, but it's so much more than what people think it is. So you are apathetic toward your faith, then you are hurting non-Christians. And this is something I think holds pretty true. Proverbs 22:6, something that you've heard over and over again. Train up your child in the way that they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. So I think I can think in my, I don't have a ton of experience, but in my experience in youth ministry, I think I can think of one kid that I did not know him, or I did not know his parents because I knew him. So pretty much everyone in here, I met your kids before I met you. I knew you before I met you because I met your kids. Kids are exactly what their parents are. I have never gone home and met one of my friend's parents without leaving and say, yeah, that explains a lot. I think if you met my parents, you would say, yeah, that explains a lot. But that's the thing. If you are apathetic, your kids are going to be apathetic. I can think of one example in the hundreds of kids that I've come into contact with. I can think of one example where the kid took his faith more seriously than his parents. That, I think, speaks volumes. How do you deal with your faith? I hope it's well, because that's how your kids are going to be. Now, they might go through teenage years, they might change a little bit, but when they get older, when they get to be your age, more than likely, your kids are going to be exactly the way that you are in their faith. And that's the importance of not being apathetic. And again, it's just my opinion, but to me, this is the biggest problem we have in the church. So here's what I would say is one of the solutions to it. I don't normally talk about current events because, I mean, for my age, I keep up with current events more than most people do. But I don't see a lot of point in it sometimes. But there's been some things going on here recently. I'm sure you've seen some of them that really I think make me want to speak about this. First of all, this is some people call her the second lady. This is Mike Pence, our vice president's wife. Before he became vice president, she worked at a Christian school as a music teacher. And to my understanding, if I'm understanding correctly, she kind of stepped down from that job when her husband became the vice president. And now she's decided she wants to go back and teach music at this school. This school is a private Christian school people get to choose to go to. And in their guidelines, they do not allow people who are homosexual. They do not allow people who are transgendered. They also do not allow people who are fornicating out of wedlock or doing all sorts of other things. They accept people who live a Christian lifestyle. She has been raked through the coals and absolutely just torn down by the media. How terrible this is that she's going to a school that discriminates against these people. These people have a choice whether they want to go there, first of all, but they're attacking the Christian lifestyle. You can say they're just attacking her because they don't like the president, they don't like the vice president. They're attacking the Christian lifestyle. And what really drove me crazy, what really drove me to the edge, some of you might have seen this picture. This is a Catholic school kid, Catholic high school. I'm going to tell you the real story, and then I'll tell you the story that the media put out there. But him and his classmates went to the pro-life rally in Washington, D.C. that was, I think, last weekend or the weekend before. And they're sitting in front of the Capitol waiting on their bus to come. And this man, there was already people shouting racist things at them, shouting terrible things at them, and they ignored them. This man walks up, he's a Native American, he has his drum there, and he walks into the crowd of the kids, banging his drum, finds this kid wearing a Make America Great hat again, and walks up to him, locks eyes with him, and just sits in front of him and plays his drum. He's the instigator. There's no question. And hearing this kid talk afterwards, he was trying to defuse the situation. Everything I've heard, he sounds like a wonderful kid. But this is the picture that the media showed. This looks bad for that kid. This looked like the kid walked up to him and is just taunting him while he is expressing his culture. But that's not what happened. And if this happened any other time to any other people, this would not be a story. Nobody would care. The reason that people cared is because it was a Catholic school and because it was a pro-life rally. People drugged this kid through the mud. People sent, not just this kid, but several of the kids that were in this group, they posted their information online. They were getting phone calls, texts, they were getting letters, death threats, all kind of things because of this. And it was because they were lied about. Because people were attacking Christian beliefs and the Christian faith. Now, I don't want to be a fearmonger. I don't want to try to heap up a lot of fear and make everybody scared and worried. But it's very likely coming. I've been being told this my whole life. And I said, we've got the First Amendment. We're going to be fine. But the more and more you see how things are going, it might come. It might not. I hope it doesn't. In a way, I hope it doesn't. But here's why, if it does, it is both a bad thing and a good thing. If this persecution comes, it's very likely in the coming years that the government can show up on our doorstep and say, you've got to allow gay marriages here, you have to allow homosexuals to work here, or you're going to lose your tax-exempt status. It's very likely that could happen. So with that, here's why, first of all, it would be a negative thing. Numbers would shrink. This church would be smaller. I think every church would be smaller. And the people that we are losing are the people here in Revelations 3:15. People that are neither hot nor cold, they are lukewarm. And also people here in Matthew 7 where Jesus says, not everyone who says unto me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven. So those people who do nothing but say, Lord, Lord, and expect to get into heaven, those people are probably going to leave because nobody is going to sit through persecution while they're sitting on the fence. Nobody is going to be okay with being harassed and hated because they are lukewarm towards something. So people who hurt the church will not be associated with the church. And that sounds very harsh to say hurts the church, but we looked at what apathy does to people around you. You infect the people around you with apathy. You affect your kids with apathy. You affect non-believers with apathy. So those people who do harm the church in a way will not be around anymore. So where would you draw the line? I want you to think about that this morning, because that's a very difficult question. What I mean by that, how much would you deal with before you denied Christ? When would you deny Christ? Would you be okay being harassed, made fun of for your faith? I think most of us would say yes. Would you be okay being politically attacked and people, just absolutely hating you for what you believe? Again, I think we'd say yes. Would you be okay being put in jail because of what you believed? Would you be okay being beaten for what you believe? Would you be okay being put to death? Now, those are extreme examples, yes, and I think all of us it's easy to say, yeah, I would die first. I would go through all of these things. There's no way I would deny Christ. I think that's so easy to say, but we have a biblical example of where Peter is told that he would deny Christ, and he says, even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble. And sure enough, Peter stumbled. So it's very easy for us to say, regardless of what happens, no matter what persecution we face, I'm going to stand strong. But when the moment really comes, there's going to be a lot fewer than say that they are. So you kind of see an example of people who are apathetic, these people who are lukewarm in some way in the story of Ananias and Sapphira. Something most of us probably know, where they lie about the amount of money that they give to the church. They sell a piece of land, they lie to the amount that they give to the church, and they both die because they lied. And I want you to understand, this is a very, very harsh way of looking at this. I understand that. But I think sometimes we need to look at things in the harshest term and then walk them back to maybe reality. But what is God doing here? He's seeing these people who are not dedicated to what they are doing. If they wouldn't have lied, that's fine, but they wanted to act like they were something that they were not. They see these people that were not dedicated to what they were doing. And again, I know this is very harsh, but he weeds them out. He gets rid of them because he knew that they were going to hurt the church. It's a very harsh way of looking at it, but still, you see these people who are apathetic and they do this to the church and the negative consequences of that. But here's the second effect, and here's the great thing. I think the church will grow. If we are persecuted today, I believe that the church will grow. The church grew more in the first century than any other time in history. And I want to be intellectually honest here. There were more people at that time. There were no Christians, so everybody was open to being a Christian. But at the same time, it still grew more than any time in history. And not only that, it was also persecuted in the first century more than any time in history. And it was really persecuted. People being put to death. Of the 12, John is the only apostle that was not put to death because of his beliefs. He's the only one that got to be an old man. You see countless, you hear terrible things about what Nero did, and people were basically lit on fire in cages to be lights in his garden parties. That is some kind of torture. Acts 11:19, now those who were scattered after the persecution that arose over Stephen traveled as far as, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, I'm sorry. I'm not going to try to pronounce any of those. The point of this, though, preaching the word to no one but Jews only. The point of this is God used the persecution to his advantage. Because of the persecution, the church left Jerusalem and went all over to preach the gospel. So yeah, there was persecution in Jerusalem. That was terrible for them, but they left because of it, and the gospel was able to spread because of it. So God used persecution here. How are we to say that he's not going to use persecution for us today? Because there is powers in numbers. And normally when you hear that phrase, you're thinking the more people, the better. But in all honesty, 10 dedicated men can accomplish more than 100 men who don't care, who are apathetic. You've probably heard the expression before, 10% of the people doing 100% of the work. Most of the time it turns out that way. So even if you do have those 100 people, there's probably only 10 of them doing anything. But 10 people who care about what they are doing and are willing to put everything they have behind it are going to accomplish more than 100. And more importantly, one man with God can accomplish more than 1,000 people can. And I think that's pretty true here. We see in Judges 15, when it's interesting here that it says, "Then the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that is burned with fire." And we see where Samson breaks loose, finds a fresh jawbone of a donkey, and he killed 1,000 men. And it's interesting how it starts there. It doesn't say, and Samson was really, really strong and great, so he killed this many people. It says the power of the Lord came on him. With God, one man can accomplish more than 1,000. And we also see in Judges, Josh talked about this story last week, where Gideon is told that there are too many people with you for me to give the Midianites into your hands. And the reason is very interesting, because he didn't want Israel to take credit for it. He didn't want to say, he didn't want them to say that we did it. We were able to do it because we had so many people and we overcame them. He said, no, I want you to know that I did it. And, if you have 1,000 people doing great things, there's a lot of people. If you have 30 dedicated people doing the amazing things that the church does, there's no other explanation other than they've got God on their side. So there is power in numbers. So just because the numbers may dwindle, just because fewer people might show up on Sunday morning and Wednesday nights, it doesn't mean the church is going downhill. It doesn't mean that all is lost, because the resiliency is a very, very strong thing. I ran a lot. I know I don't look like it anymore, but I ran a lot when I was in high school. I loved it. Loved cross country, loved track. But I can't do it anymore for multiple reasons. One, I'm a lot older than I should be to be as young as I am. But mainly the thing that keeps me from getting back into running is there's no competition. That's what I loved about it, because it is about as pure competition as you can get. I'm going to run faster than you for longer. I don't have that. I don't have anybody to run against. So it's just not fun anymore. It's not worth doing anymore. Sometimes we need an enemy. Sometimes we need somebody to push us to make us better. If you like football, you see quarterback races, who's going to be the quarterback this season. It's a good thing because they make each other work harder. And it's the same concept. Sometimes we just need somebody to fight against. If somebody persecutes the church, we have that. We have somebody to say, okay, I'm going to prove them wrong. How many times have you worked harder because you were trying to prove somebody wrong? So we have that exact same. We have resiliency. We have something that makes us be resilient. That being said, this is something we have to tread with very carefully, because we see in Matthew 5:44 where it says to love your enemies, to bless those who curse you. And that's going to work in our favor. You've heard the expression, kill them with kindness. But at the same time, you see somebody that's persecuting you, that's yelling in your face, telling you how terrible you are, and you do nothing but say, okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'd love to talk to you about this sometime. I'm sorry. And you walk away, they're going to be like, okay, what's his deal? Why did he not yell back at me? Why are we not fist fighting right now? And they're going to wonder. They're going to question. And that's the thing. They're not going to be the only ones that question. If all that is left is sincere Christians, people will see Christ and not false prophets. Yeah, I know that's a very harsh way of saying things, but, when people see who Christ is, people see Christ through us, those who don't know what we stand for see our resiliency, and they want to know who we serve. So when people see people bearing down on the church from every direction and just wanting us to die out and just completely go away, but we're standing strong, we're being peaceful, we're being loving, because that's how the Bible tells us to be. Those people who are not in the mob, not in the group of people trying to get rid of us, but they don't know much about what we stand for, they're going to see that and wonder what is going on with those people. They are facing a lot right now, but they're still happy. They still have joy. They still are where they are. And they're going to wonder, what's with them? That opens so many doors. That opens so many opportunities to say, hey, yeah, let us tell you. So, yeah, I think the church is going to grow. Isaiah 43. But now thus says the Lord who created you, O Jacob, and he formed you, O Israel. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. Fear not. I I don't know that this is going to happen. I don't know. Something might completely change in the next few years, and there might be no persecution come to us. Great. Good. That's good too. While it might be good for the church, nobody really wants to go through persecution. But come or not, do not fear persecution. Have no fear in what they can do to you. We say that we want to be like the first century church. I've heard that all my life. We want to do exactly what the first century church did because we know they were right. Well, here is our chance. If it comes, here is our chance. You want to do what the first century church did? They stood firm through persecution. Here is your chance to do the same thing. You see what happens when Paul and Silas were persecuted after they had been severely flogged. So they were beaten. They were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. They were beaten and thrown into prison. I would say that is the purest form of persecution. When he received these orders, he put them in the inner cell and fastened their feet into stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. They did not fear. What is their reaction to persecution? They were beaten and they were thrown into jail. And they were praying and they were singing hymns. The other prisoners were listening because these guys just got beaten and thrown into prison. They should be mad. They should be cussing the jailer. They should be all kind of different upset. They're praying and they're singing. And they're curious as to what is going on. They're wondering, why are they still joyful? So here's one thing that I wanted to point out, because this is something that you will probably hear, even if this persecution comes. We don't face real persecution today. They did in the first century. What you face, that's nothing. You're right. They faced a lot worse in the first century. A lot worse. But that doesn't make what we're going through any less difficult. One of the worst things I can say to my wife is, man, I'm tired. Because that woman works 12-hour shifts, and it's not any kind of schedule whatsoever. She's always tired. But her being tired doesn't make me not tired. So it's the same thing here. Yeah, they faced a lot more persecution, but that doesn't mean we're not. That doesn't mean that what we go through is not difficult. Even if it's not the kind of persecution that we've been talking about this morning, even if it's not really hardcore, people hating us, even if it's just being mocked because you're trying to do the right thing, don't discount that. That's still rough. If you call yourself weak because you're upset about that, then you're really going to be in trouble when real persecution comes. Understand that it's hard regardless. It's hard regardless of how much it is, especially when it's your friends. This is, again, kind of an extreme, but you think about the first century church, you think they knew the people very well that were persecuting them? Probably not. You're probably going to know the people that persecute you. Like I said, if you're persecuted very smallly, if you're harassed because you're trying to do the right thing, you know the person that's persecuting you. That hurts worse. That cuts deep. So never downplay the persecution that you face. So one of the things they tell you in school to do, preaching and youth ministries, tell them what you're going to say, tell them, and then tell them again. So, give them a summary, do it, and then give them a summary again. So you look at this and you see the problem is we have too much apathy. The solution might be persecution. God used persecution in the first century. Could be using persecution today to help his church. And yeah, we're going to lose people, but in the grand scheme of things, the church is going to be stronger for it. So I asked you at the start, where would you draw your line? At what point are you going to say, okay, this is too much. I'm not going to be put to death for this. And it's really easy to say, I'm going to be put to death. I'm not going to deny Christ either way. But we don't really know till we're put in that situation. But it's nice to have enough self-awareness to kind of know where you stand. So I ask you now, where do you stand? Are you one of those that are kind of apathetic? Are you one of those who are lukewarm? Some of those who just say, Lord, Lord. And I'm sure you've heard this a lot, but I think we're going to have a chance tonight to see who some of those people are. Because I tell you, if you're not willing to go through the struggle to get out of the house again on a Sunday night to go to church, do you really think that you're going to go through persecution and stay strong? That's very harsh, and Megan tells me all the time, no, that's too mean. Tell them, it's a very good quote, but I don't say it very often. But if I stepped on your feet, I'm sorry, I was aiming for your heart. I'm sure you've heard that before, but in reality, I hope that you are self-aware enough to see where you stand on this spectrum of apathy and faith. And if it's not where it needs to be, you should know deep down whether you would give in to persecution or not. So we offer an opportunity every time we come together that we give you a chance to come forward, and we would be happy to pray for you. We want to pray for you. We want to pray that you have strength. We don't want anybody to leave through persecution. We don't want anybody to be apathetic. We talk about it as I talked about it kind of as an us versus them thing. That's not right. We want to make each other stronger. And if you feel like you have been apathetic, if you feel like you have been weak this morning, we offer this invitation. If you have heard the good news and want to have your sins washed away in baptism, that's a huge encouragement to everyone here, and we'd be glad to have you as a brother. If you need anything, we ask that you come now as we stand and sing.